Olá pessoal, muito feliz, sou o Pedro, fundador da ClearSale, da Conf, e fui no Web Summit e o tema, como vocês podem imaginar, é inteligência artificial e como é que a inteligência artificial cada vez mais poderosa com todo o poder computacional que tem. E uma coisa muito importante é que ela precisa de dados. A inteligência artificial só está aí inteligente porque nós humanos colocamos todo esse conteúdo lá na internet e a nossa inteligência humana fez com que a gente conseguisse pegar esse conteúdo aberto, esses dados abertos, para que ele tenha mais facilidade para o uso da pessoa, né? Como eu digo, a inteligência artificial varejou. Agora todos têm acesso, né, a essa imensidão e essa interação que essa nova inteligência generativa nos proporciona. E tem um tema muito importante que é segurança. Essa palestra aqui do Matterhorn, né, Mattermost, que é uma plataforma de gestão para ver vulnerabilidades, tem aí, ele explica quais são os pontos mais vulneráveis que as empresas têm que olhar. Porque agora com a inteligência, e a inteligência precisando de muitos dados, as empresas que têm mais dados e que têm mais valor nesses dados é que serão mais atacadas. Então, nesse vídeo que vocês vão ver aí, do Web Summit, é bem importante, né, que as pessoas tenham ciência de que agora, com a inteligência artificial mais barata, né, mais acessível, o que vai acontecer, né? As interações e os ataques cibernéticos às empresas também serão muito mais sofisticados. E eles já estão na frente, e eles já estão usando isso. Então aqui é a introdução para esse vídeo. Aproveite o vídeo, veja todos os pontos de maior críticos que os Chief Information Security Office, que é o CISO, fizeram para dizer pequeno, médio e grande risco das empresas. Então, para todo mundo. E pessoal, muito importante, pim. A coisa mais importante que pode detonar uma empresa é quando ela tem uma invasão, quando os dados dela ficam para fora, e isso é uma coisa que vai ser cada vez mais sofisticada. Então, fiquem atentos, e isso é um tema não só para o cara de segurança, mas para todo mundo. Para todo mundo, você que está usando o dado, tem que ter cuidado para botar dados sensíveis também nessas plataformas, porque ela aprende. Então, se for fazer alguma coisa, veja antes o que você está fazendo, porque ele põe lá no bolo. E por que ela é inteligente? Porque ela vai aprendendo. O algoritmo, ela pergunta, vai aprendendo. Então, todos os dados que você botar lá, ele é muito importante se tiver um segredo de empresa. Então, o que aconteceu aí, a Samsung vetou todo mundo que estava acessando o ChatGPT. Então, a vulnerabilidade maior é o humano, é o ser humano. Então, temos que educar, temos que ter todos os procedimentos de segurança e toda a tecnologia que está aí para ter cada vez um ambiente mais seguro. Porque a maioria é boa, temos que acreditar que a maioria é boa. E esta minoria que quer fazer coisa errada, nos torna cada vez mais fortes, mais colaborativos e mais resilientes. Então, bora lá, aproveite bem esse vídeo. Um beijo!
The innovation is going to come from is the strict security organizations that these rules will flow of AI. 80 CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers from all these top enterprises, they got together like, we have to figure this out. That could really whiplash, could be companies, could be programs, but there's a lot there. And there's not, a day that goes by where people aren't talking about it and thinking about it and finding issues, but also finding solutions. That proprietary we're putting in is going to break someday. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this doesn't happen, but just in case, I want to have this on record so I can say I told you so. So definitely recommend that CISO guide. That's kind of one of the, it's week by week, right? That's one of the latest ones to come out. So. Companies for secure collaboration. So what I'm going to share today is going to be a success. Severe type of outage that you can have. You know, everything's broken, everything's on fire, that's a sub-zero. And of course, everyone was thinking that in the abstract. I'd seen an office building. And what changed my mind about this revolving door was being with someone who came from the military, who came from special forces. And they said to me, I don't like using revolving doors because someone could jam me inside and open fire. Do you send an email? Do I use WhatsApp? Do I text someone? Do I use, do I actually call them with my phone? So this is a kind of a way to think ahead and saying, well, when we actually have emergency as a team, what are we going to do together? Where are we going to go when the primary fails? Because you can't have people scattered across 8 different systems when you have an emergency engineer. So a lot of folks out there have job titles that say, I'm an engineer, and some people say, well, but what we really do is you kind of program. What's the difference? And my background's from being from Toronto, Canada, and in Toronto, Canada, the word engineer is actually regulated. The same way you have to, the word lawyer is regulated, the word doctor is regulated. Professional engineer, where I grew up, is regulated, and it's because of a disaster. It's like all things that have regulation. It's because something bad happened, and when something bad happens, a lot of people kind of think about how do you prevent that from happening again, and how do you put the right rules in place. 4 years of construction, and it failed. It failed, and it killed 75 construction workers that were building the bridge. And it's a historic bridge because it was actually conceived in 1887 by John A. Macdonald, the first Prime Minister of Canada. So when you think about the history of the nation, this is a tremendous disaster. And what happened, from that failure of the Quebec Bridge was a lot of sort of thinking about regulation and licensing, about the obligation of an engineer in building these, parts of infrastructure of society. The findings of the Royal Commission in 1908, a year after, found 2 things that were really interesting. Number one is they didn't put someone who was qualified in charge of the engineering project. The person was too junior, didn't have the experience. But here's the other thing that was really important is that they wanted to hold the engineer accountable for overseeing the work, not just the design, but they want to hold someone accountable for what happens after the plan is set. The plan was not correct. It didn't have the right calculations for bearing the weight, and it didn't get implemented properly. The ethics actually comes with a physical symbol. It's an iron ring. So if you have people from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, there's an iron ring that they wear after they take that oath, and it's a reminder constantly of their obligation to society, to safety, to good workmanship. I will not henceforth suffer or pass or be privy to the passing of bad workmanship or faulty material. And as this profession evolves, you've got, even to this day, licensed engineers will stamp their drawings and they're going to be held accountable. The talk today is, what are the things that go wrong and how do you think about them in advance? Fair Act 25, in 1982, this was a software failure. So this was an imaging machine that was used, and it had a software bug in it, and it would deliver 125 times more radiation than it was supposed to. And 6 people died. A lot of people had issues. 3 things. The first is adopt that duty of care and have an organization that really believes in that principle. Staff your leaders with people that feel that obligation. It's a big difference in culture. The second is to look behind and fix problems once. And if people who are site reliability engineering and do practice, the DevSecOps and DevOps, this is all kind of known to you, right? You have retrospectives, you have Agile, you have the way to do things, it's looking back. What I'll share with you today is a new idea, which is how do you look ahead and how do you anticipate the failure modes? And there's not, a day that goes by where people aren't talking about it and thinking about it and finding issues, but also finding solutions. That's the instruction on the left, that's the result on the right. Make a tic-tac-toe game. It knows what a tic-tac-toe game is. You navigate with the keyboard, you can play on the left. A little bit more complicated, but you can actually get acceleration, bouncing, all that to work just by asking about it. And this one's my favorite. You can actually build like Arkanoid, if anyone is old enough to remember that game. It's a paddle that moves back and forth and the ball bounces around. And you, in the left-hand side, just define, I want to play this game. And it writes the code. And this code is all written, it's open source on GitHub. You can just go and ask ChatGPT, you can actually try the output here, but it's a full game. And it was completely written by someone who could be like completely non-technical, AI. 80 CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers from all these top enterprises, they got together like, we have to figure this out, and this is what they came up with. It's 12 principles, of what you have to look at, sort of low, medium, high. And I wanted to share this, and that's kind of okay. They know that from a financial standpoint, the CISO, the CIO is going to approve using, exploring with Gen AI. Just realize there's going to be a bill at the end, and the bill can be really big. That's all right. The second is AI ethics and regulatory developments. This is not legal, but it's just ethical in terms of using other people's work, attribution, that'll get figured out. And then software security vulnerabilities, that's important, but that's kind of standard, that's kind of all software. But that's the kind of the low branch. No one wrote that, no one human wrote that code. No one can actually go through and kind of do that and kind of fill out the security form without someone new going and reading it. The AI, you can't really yet trust that the AI can actually do the security analysis. So you have a lot of code that's going to be generated, and you just don't know if it's going to be secure. And also, if that person who's writing it doesn't have, isn't a full engineer, and they're just asking ChatGPT to build things, there's going to be ways to break into those systems. And that kind of code might just be flooding all of our websites and all of our sort of low-code development. And it's something that we want to think about. That's a medium. Reputation and trust, that one's common. I think anyone who's doing ChatGPT understands this. Number 7, threat actor evolution is kind of scary. This is all the offensive cyber done better, augmented. The one that you're going to see the most is going to be phishing attacks. So I'm the CEO, co-founder of a company. I get phishing attacks all the time. Some of the audience probably get as well. They're not very good, right? They're clearly not for me. But very shortly, our security team and myself, we're anticipating it getting much better. It's going to read my Twitter feed. It's going to read my LinkedIn posts, right? It's going to know everything about me, and just from public data. And the phishing is going to get more advanced. And there's simple things we can do like confirmations and things like that. But just understand that the threat level is increasing. The efficiency of attacks is increasing. Code helpers that are trained on open source data. There's going to be a lot of sort of questions out there. And then last is bias and discrimination. So it's kind of a Venn diagram of trust and reputation, but something to realize when you actually do use that AI that's trained on data, it's going to pick up patterns that may or not be appropriate for the work. Confidentiality. When you're going out and you're having the whole organization start to use ChatGPT, the legal and security folks are going to be, hold on, like what are you putting in there? What's the source code? There's literally product managers throwing in private keys to their cloud platforms to go and run experiments. But data and confidentiality is going to be massively important, not only with what we put in, but very shortly, these systems will be monitoring our conversations, monitoring our email, training up in your organization. And that's one of the very top concerns. Right underneath that is enterprise SaaS and third parties. So who knows where that data goes after? So you're training a model explicitly. What are the models being trained in the background? And also, how do you know when you're exposed to the AI? So I could be talking to the bank and sending text messages and information, asking questions. That could all be going into the bank's AI. Could it be going to a third-party AI? So big question, especially when you can't have all the different pieces of AI necessarily put together so fast. The third is, and I'm sure this has been in the news and you've heard about it, the AI behavioral vulnerabilities. So prompt injection, the ability to reveal confidential data from the models by putting the right prompts. And lastly, legal and regulatory. So the laws are changing. All those things we talked about, they're concerns, but when the law and the regulation change, that could really whiplash, could be companies, could be programs, but there's a lot there. More companies are doing it probably in a quieter fashion. There's probably not a person in this room that's in a company that's not figuring out some of these. So definitely recommend that CISO guide. That is that's kind of one of the, it's week by week, right? That's one of the latest ones that come out. You can see how we're integrating ChatGPT into conversations. You can see how the community is creating ChatGPT plugins and connecting to LLMs, and that whole ecosystem working very transparently. We've partnered with the former Chief Software Officer of the United States Air Force, who started a company called Ask Sage that's actually using this approach in government, because if you think about the highest compliance, highest regulation, that's where a lot of the security innovation is going to come from, is the strict security organizations that these rules will flow. So offensive cyber. The resources dedicated to breaching a system are proportional to the economic value of the breach. What generative AI does is it dramatically increases the value of proprietary data. So your data is worth more. People can mine your data more quickly and extract value out of it. What that means is the largest, most centralized stores of this proprietary data, where everyone is storing their data, that's going to have a disproportionately high amount of attacks. And beyond a certain threshold, that failure will be inevitable. I hope I'm wrong. So what this really says is, that proprietary we're putting in is going to break someday. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this doesn't happen. But just in case, I want to have this on record so I can say I told you so. You can see how we're integrating ChatGPT into conversations. You can see how the community is creating ChatGPT plugins and connecting to LLMs, and that whole ecosystem working very transparently. We've partnered with the former Chief Software Officer of the United States Air Force, who started a company called Ask Sage that's actually using this approach in government, because if you think about the highest compliance, highest regulation, that's where a lot of the security innovation is going to come from, is the strict security organizations that these rules will flow from. And the Asgardian security assumption says, hey, there's something super strong over there. They've got more security engineers than we have by far. We're going to bet on that thing. And with generative AI and changing the economics, that Asgard becomes sort of like the biggest target. And the question is, what happens next? I hope I've given you some new ideas and new ways to think about things, and I hope your behavior, and so much.